I guess for those that don't know you or like never met you, do you want to just talk a little bit about like your experience getting into audio and then a little bit about your college career and what
Yeah,
it
for sure. Yeah. So, hey, what's up? I'm Joey. I was a student at IU from 2015 to 2021, and I joined the audio program in 2018. I've been a musician, drummer like my whole life, and write a lot of music as well. So I joined the audio program because I wanted to, first of all, study something different than what I was doing at the time, which was I was in business school. So I was a Kelly kid for a while, and I wanted to learn how to make my music better. So that kind of developed my interest in audio. And I had really like when I got into the program, like I had really like never used a microphone before. Like, and it was like I was so used to doing music like electronic music and like other stuff where it's like I'm doing a lot of the production like on a computer and stuff like that. So I never really did like the traditional like recording and engineering type setup. So taking A101 like the first semester, like a lot of that stuff was new to me. And then we got into like digital audio and like effects processing. So I was like, all right, this is kind of what I have experience with. But yeah, so I kind of came in with not a whole lot of analog recording experience. And so I was really lucky to kind of develop those skills when I was in school. And then I graduated in 2021, moved out to LA, and I've been working here at Desk Doctor for a year and a half, which is insane. The time has really flown by. And then I have a couple other gigs that I do as well. So yeah.
Cool. And your time here at IU, I know like you graduated during COVID or like I guess coming out of it a little. Can you talk about I guess that and how you think that affected maybe your college experience a little bit?
Yeah, it sucked. It was it was awful. But see, I'm saying that to you guys because some or most of you were in high school when that was going on, so you had it way worse than I did, and so I'm not even like I have no room to complain in front of you guys about that. But yeah, I mean, COVID was rough, but I gotta say, like the professors were like absolute rock stars during that time. I mean, they handled everything so well. They were super candid about the entire process, and they were like, "Look, like we kind of don't know what's going on. We don't know what the university is going to hand down to us, but like we're going to do the best we can." And I personally, I mean, I know. Let's see, who do I see there? Yeah, Jake. I mean, you were there, and Roger, you were there. That was your
Yeah,
freshman year too. So
yeah.
um, you guys know, I mean, we made a lot of stuff happen that year. Like it was, I think we still came out on top. It was a lot of fun, and there was, um, I think it made a lot of like a lot of people in your class. It gave you like an extra degree of like enthusiasm to come out and help with like projects and really get your foot in the door with like working on stuff at IU. So I was really thankful to be around you guys around your class because I had a lot of fun working with you on stuff. And then yeah, I mean it was really different, but we I mean, the worst part of it was like the same thing everybody says. It was, having to hop onto a Zoom meeting for class. It's just like it gets so old after a while. Uh, but we still had a good time. I think it was still learned a lot, and we still were able to get into the studios and work. So it was overall, it was an incredibly positive experience, I would say.
Nice, nice. And then if you just want to maybe take me through your decision making about like your post college plans. Was there like a certain area that you just kind of like knew you were going to go into, or were you kind of like exploring a lot of different things and then you just kind of ended up doing what you're doing now? I'd love to
Yeah,
hear that sort of process.
yeah, for sure. So I had no idea what I wanted to do when I still kind of don't. It's funny, but
Hmm.
like it's amazing. Like the options that I thought I had or that I did have when I was moving out and like what I was thinking, like, oh, okay, do I want to go into music or do I want to go into post or do I want to, all that stuff. Um, I still have the same amount of options available, but they've all changed to other things. It's like now I'm debating whether or not I want to, you know, go into like studio wiring or like do more on like builds and design or acoustics or like any so and my interests haven't changed. It's just you find yourself in really interesting opportunities around here. So when I was kind of coming out of school in 2021, I spent that kind of final summer in Bloomington, which I would highly recommend for anybody who's about to graduate, or even just at some point in your college career, like spend a summer in Bloomington. You will not regret it at all. I was working on, a few projects here and there that summer. And then once I moved, I was like, okay, I had kind of like a soft sort of job offer from Chandler, one of Chandler's people, um, which didn't end up turning into much, but it was like still like employment for a little bit, which was cool. And I'm very thankful to him for that. And that was doing like assistant type stuff for a producer named Rob, who Chandler can tell you more about, because I didn't work with him for very long. But he, had me doing like just helping him with whatever projects he was working on. That was occasionally I would like help him with like label admin, or I would melodyne something for him, or like something like that. Again, not a whole lot of work until I started like full-time stuff at Desk Doctor. But what was funny was I had no desire to be a tech when I first moved out. I was like, that was like not in my purview at all. Like I had electronics experience, obviously, from all of the classes with Stucker, but I enjoyed that stuff. I was really into it, but it never crossed my mind as like, I want to do this full time. And then when I finally moved out, my friend Carl, who I don't think any of you were in school with him. He graduated a year before I did. He was working as a tech at Paramount, which is a music studio, not Paramount Pictures, but Paramount Music, which is similarly named but no connection, out here in Hollywood. And he was working as a full-time tech there, and also like he had done some running and assisting as well. And he hit me up one day and he was like, "Hey, I have a freelance tech job I'm working on, and I'm like kind of just in over my head. Like it's this massive console that needs a lot of work, and I kind of know what I'm doing, but I just like need another body. Like, can you just come hang out and like help me out with this stuff?" And I was like, "Sure." Like I like electronics. I was good at that in school. Like I'll just go check it out. And it was at this, I mean, just this grimy studio out in the Hollywood Hills that um clearly needed a lot of love beyond what Carl and I were able to do with it. But we had this massive SSL-J console, and Carl and I were working through it. There were a lot of issues, and then we ended up coming across a phone number for this guy named Bruce, who is like apparently the SSL wizard. Some might even call him the desk doctor. And we got his number. He came out and looked at this console, and he was like, "Yeah, okay." He helped us like set some stuff up with it, like, because he's just a master of that stuff, of a lot of things. And he got some channels working for us, like got entire like sets of the console like back up and running, just because he could kind of look at a console and like kind of make it work. That's how good he is at it. So he came out, helped us with it, and we continued doing that job. It was a lot of like cable building and management, and then just troubleshooting, a lot of plugging stuff in and out, trying to figure out why we're getting certain voltages in certain places. It's all, it was over my head a lot of that time. And then we went over and checked out Bruce's spot, this place, and I was like, "Hey, like I'm looking for like full-time work. Like, are you?" He's like, "Yeah, we're always hiring. Like, come by." So I ended up getting hired there pretty soon afterwards, while also working on that freelance gig with Carl. And that kind of turned into pretty much every other opportunity I've gotten. So it kind of like just took one thing to really make it work for me out here, which is, it's all about like who you kind of know and who you have good relationships with. Like that's what's going to get you work. Like I wish I could say like, you guys are, all of us coming from IU are like the most experienced people coming out here with like the biggest qualifications, and that's just going to get you work, but it doesn't. Um, it's all about who you know out here and who the professors can vouch to you for, or vouch for to you. Because that's also been a source of work, is like the professors being like, "Hey, like I know this person out there, like talk to them." That has also worked out in a lot of our favors out here as well. So it's like it's hard, but it pays to have people skills. It pays to be able to just make friends with people. I'm not even going to use the word networking, because that's out here. That's not what it is. Like this isn't accounting. This isn't finance. You're not trying to network out here. You're trying to move out and form good, solid, real relationships with people, because that's what's going to get you work. I hope that was I kind of forgot what you asked me, but I hope that was some semblance of an answer. of.
No, that was really good. Yeah, I think that's really great advice. So do you want to talk a little bit more about like your day to day at Desk Doctor and like what there's so much variance in jobs in LA. Like some, I feel like you're like if you're certain jobs you're like working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and other stuff are is more stable. Can you describe kind of like what your work life and day to day life is like at over there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I used to do kind of like the 9 to 5 thing at Desk Doctor, really because it's LA, so nobody wakes up early. So it's more like 10 to 6 or 7. Um, and I used to do that 5 days a week here. That was kind of the only thing I had going on. And it was like that for several months. I have now kind of like 3 different gigs that I rotate between, this being one of them. And I'll take you on a little tour actually of our spot here. Hold on. Let me put my camera. Okay, so here's like our front room, like reception area. We're located in the beautiful San Fernando Valley region of California. Great place to raise your kids up. Here's our demo room. This has a lot of just random shit in it right now. This is a console we're working on for a producer. There's a bunch of gear we pulled out of a studio that we're gonna someday do something with. Here's another frame for a console back here, and this is just kind of like a storage room at this point. I'll take you back to the main area, where we kind of make things happen. This is my coworker Brant and our office dog Nala. Brant's working on some cables right now for a console. This is like our main cable making area, and we push out just miles of cable every year, like it's insane. Bunch of these consoles have been brought in from studios, and we're working on servicing them and just getting them ready to either sell or go back to their owner. Warren Hewert's is here somewhere, I think, is one of these. This is Metallica's. And then back here is where we build the custom Series 75 Neve consoles. There's Jake there, and Zoe's back there somewhere. There he is. We are building, I'll talk more about these in a little bit, but we're building basically new consoles. This one is for Raphael Sadiq of Tony over at Blakesley Studios. Here I was cutting some plastic earlier. And then back here we have just a bunch of like gear storage. Let's see where are it's a bit of a mess, but we have a lot of stuff from a lot of people. Some people are using it as storage. Some people we have to kind of fix the gear, move it around place to place. So a lot of my day-to-day here it can vary anywhere from making cables or soldering PCBs for new boards that we're making, or we go out a lot and do large scale like console moving, which is a lot of fun. I'm sure Max has probably talked to you about that when he interned with us over the summer. Because he got to do like some really cool stuff with that. So yeah, it's a lot of it's really like I do a lot of the time I'll do something different every day here. Lately though, it's been a lot of cables because we're doing some bigger jobs that need, just several hundreds, thousands feet of cable ran. And this is not like just your standard like XLR cables. This is like massive 24 channel snakes that we're running because it's powering a console. So we just have a lot to do. There's actually a whole stack of cables behind me that need to be prepped out and put connectors on and all that stuff. So that's what I like my day-to-day to be there, is just the ability to go in and kind of like make cables for 8 hours. I find that to be a lot of fun. But other times we go out and move consoles. We did a move. I've done a few moves over for Chris Lord Algie in Tarzana. He has a really cool studio out there. We've done, what was another big move that we did? Did a move down in like kind of near Disneyland area for this guy who's like, he's like the only person in LA that does, I think it's Vietnamese pop music. He's like the guy for that. And so it's like I was like, if we don't like move this console and get it in, like the entire like Vietnamese music is like going like not have an engineer. So it's like that was cool. And he's like such a sweet guy. And we have a couple of pieces of gear that we've done for him, but it's like just, I mean, we're talking about getting a big U-Haul and like just making it happen. So it's a lot of like manual labor sometimes too, which is fine. I enjoy it because like it takes me away from like a computer or a phone. Like um, I get to have like physical activity at my job, which is huge. So that's what kind of the day-to-day stuff is like. As far as the other gigs I have going on, do I work at this other studio down in Inglewood called Volume, and I'm just like teching there. But what we're really doing right now is a build because they're just not done yet. They're trying to like run sessions while not having a complete studio built, which is a little bit insane. And so Carl ended up getting hired there full time, and he brought me on a part-time basis to help out. And they're all really, really nice. Everybody that works there is super cool. It's for the producers, 1,500 or nothing on that studio. And they're really, really nice guys. And so I'm doing tech work for them. And then there's another IU alumni, Laura Sisk. I do some tech work and other like studio build stuff for her as well. That's a really, really cool team. So yeah, my life is a lot of like studio building and that, and like some like I don't really do like the whole vintage gear fixing type of tech work. That's like not really my thing. I do a little bit of it, but I don't find myself to be very good at that. I get bored and upset with it really easily. So I prefer more like manufacturing and design. That's kind of the tech work I like to do. And the gig at Volume is a lot of fun because Carl and I get to sit and make like large scale decisions for the studio. Be like, okay, how do we want to route this? How should we route this Atmos setup? We have to Atmos route like 2 rooms, get it all configured, you know, in 5 minutes kind of thing because they want it done. But we take our time with it and we do it right. And you'll notice once you move out here, I can speak totally for the LA scene when I say this, but I don't know about other cities if it's like this. I hope it isn't. But in LA, you'll find a lot of people in the industry are maybe not the most honest in their work. And so you'll find that you'll go to a lot of studios and they'll be like, oh yeah, you know, like this studio, like we just started to get wired by this one guy, but like he kind of dropped out halfway through. And then, you know, we've kind of had to pick up the pieces. That's what Carl and I have found we're doing a lot of at the studio. And then Bruce here at Desk Doctor, I mean, he is kind of like the guy who goes in to fix people's mistakes. So it's you'll learn really quickly that the industry is very interesting out here in terms of how people work and how people get jobs and who is coming in to fix other people's mistakes and all of that. So
Cool. Yeah, that's really informative. Do you want to talk a little bit about just, you know, you showed us like all those consoles that need to be repaired. Do you want to talk about like just from beginning to end? Do you guys move the console and bring it up here and then it gets repaired and then you get through that whole troubleshooting process and then send it back, or is it like different? I just want to know like that process start to finish.
yeah, so it's you know, every console is different. We actually here, speaking of, the man himself just walked in. Hold on. Bruce, this is a bunch of my classmates from IU. I'm doing a little interview with them about working here. And they just asked me about the process of kind of getting a console in here. And you can probably talk a little bit better about it, obviously, than I can. Process of like getting a console in here and just how from start to finish, is it a lot of like, you know, what kind of different things do you see, I guess, with the console? Because I know everyone's different.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, every single console is different. Obviously, the first thing we have to do is assess the console, and you know, it depends on whether it's a client who's moving, or if they're refurbishing the studio, or what the situation is as to whether it makes sense to bring the entire console here, or to leave the main console at the studio and bring some of the parts in. But you know, we've had consoles which have been a complete state back in the days when smoking was still very prevalent. We'd have consoles come in particular, the worst ones were coming in from Paris and France, where they would not only stink, but they would have basically everything inside the console would be coated with this nasty black, oily, nicotine-y stuff. And it would take a whole bunch of time just cleaning that up. I would say, you know, the average console basically just needs a lot of cleaning. A lot of it seems a very small, mundane thing, but pulling all the modules out, vacuuming everything away, and then cleaning down all the edge connectors, cleaning down all the switches, makes a huge difference to any console. Obviously, there are a lot of times when people are selling a console or moving a console, it's because they are at a point where they haven't done a lot of work on it for quite a while. And so you generally find that there's a whole bunch of problem modules down at the end of the console, the graveyard, as it's commonly known as. And so we go through and we fix and repair whatever those things might be. And some consoles, when they get to a particular age, might need to be recapped. Recapping is not just an age thing, it's also a temperature thing and a power on, power off thing. So basically, if you don't want to spend a ton of money on recapping a piece of equipment, never turn it off and keep it in a really nice, cool, air-conditioned space. Even if it's in a good air-conditioned space, but you turn it on and off every day, that will make a big difference to how well and how long the caps last. And of course, recapping a console and reswitching console are probably a couple of the most expensive things you can possibly do. On the upside of that, of course, is if you've actually done that and recapped and reswitched a console, you have almost got essentially a brand new console again. And that should last you another, however many years. We've got consoles now that are coming through for a recap or a recap and reswitch that are 35 years old. Once that work is done, it'll last another 35 years as long as it's looked after properly. It'll last another 35 years easily. And so a lot of the newer consoles will not. A lot of the newer consoles are not built the same way, and the way that they're put together and some of the components and stuff they use will not last that long. The other side of things, which I always like to mention, is that the older consoles use a lot of componentry, which is very standard off-the-shelf componentry. So the main number one op amp that's used in a huge number of pieces of equipment, not just consoles, but everything else as well, would be a chip called the 5534. And that's something which is, we used to joke that you could buy it at 7-Eleven. It was so common, so easy to find. Whereas a lot of the chips that are used on modern day consoles have already been discontinued, and you have to find alternatives for them. The more modern design is using stuff which is far more specific, and therefore is a much smaller market. And for the chip manufacturers to keep it going, it makes it very difficult. You can always draw the same analogy to a car. It's like you buy a brand new Ferrari today. There's only one set of tires that fit it, and that set of tires is only made by one manufacturer, and they cost a small fortune. And if they stop making them, you're screwed. You're going to have to change the wheels and suspension and everything else in order to be able to take some other tires. Whereas if you go and buy a 1967 Mustang, you can buy tires from just about anywhere and everywhere, and they'll all work, they'll all fit, and everything will be fine. It'll be a wonderful place. Same thing with electronics. Some of the older stuff is far easier to maintain because a lot of the components are easily and readily available everywhere. Some of the mechanical components may be a little bit more difficult. Some of the switches are getting difficult, but even those, it's one of the things where even when they become unobtainable for a short while, you'll generally find that somebody somewhere in the world will start remanufacturing them because there's such a huge market for them. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, so that is basically what we have to deal with on a day-to-day here. I mean, we have a lot of consoles coming in and going, a lot of consoles, like I said, that we're building as well. And yeah, I mean, every console needs a different set of things, but they all tend to have the same problems. They're dirty. They need new capacitors. They sometimes need new switches as well. So it's a lot of, I mean, that details a lot of intricate soldering that you're going to have to do, and a lot of making sure you don't accidentally break other parts of the console in the process, because you're dealing with it's analog electronics. You have to be careful. It's not just programming a chip kind of thing. So
cool. So my next question is, like, for someone that let's say they're interested in electronics and they want to get into this type of work, you know, at IU, and let's say they went through our program, what would you say that like they would be really prepared to do, and then versus like what's something that you think they would really need to work on, based on your experience in the electronics, you know, path and like the audio program in general?
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, as you all know, because you're doing it, all the audio program students build a piece of gear, which is awesome. I mean, that's like so cool that that's part of the curriculum. That is building gear is because if Stucker does it the same way that he did it when I went through the program, it's like you kind of just get to pick what you build, and you can choose anything from a 1073 clone to, you know, a full-blown obscure synth module or something. And it's like you get out of it what you put into it. But, you know, funny enough, like building that 1073 clone is going to probably prove more useful in your day-to-day, like if you're recording a lot. And so that sort of build experience is like really cool and definitely helpful. I think the building aspect of it is a little bit more glamorous than most of the work that we do here, which is unfortunate. But with the other work that we do here, it kind of comes with it's a bit easier than like having to assemble something from a kit or from scratch or however you're doing it. So as far as like the skills that you're taking out of electronics, what you guys are going to have over everybody else is theory knowledge. Like you're going to be able to, you know, spout off V equals IR, and nobody else can do that. Like that's not except for Bruce and other people who are seasoned techs. It's like that's just not nobody does that out here. What people do as techs is they come up apprenticing for other techs, and that is fine. That, you know, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but you get kind of like a limited view of how tech work actually works, and what you have to that's kind of like the other end of the spectrum from where you guys are at. So you guys are going to come out with a lot of theory knowledge and not a lot of practical experience, because you'll have built a cable, built a microphone, built a another, you know, your choice piece of gear. But you're, at least as far as when I went through the program, Stucker didn't hand us an SSL module and say, this sounds bad, fix it. But that's the work we get out here. And so it's a lot of it is like learning systems rather than learning, you know, it's like you're not going to come out here and work as a tech and learn necessarily that much more theory unless you really want to get into like designing gear, which you could do. You guys could totally do that. Like that takes a lot of work, and that's above, I think, my interest level for most things. But it's funny, I've thought about doing some gear design projects for simple like problem solving stuff that I would use around the studio. And it's like having both the theory knowledge from IU and the experiential knowledge from working out here in it, you kind of get like things start to come together more, and you're like, okay, like maybe I could like, you know, buy an enclosure and like really quickly kind of design like a dirty like kind of PCB and just mount it together, and that would theoretically work. It's like that's something that could be a possibility. Let me hang up this phone. Hold on. You got it. Okay, great. Yeah, so it's like there's, as I said, as an IU student, you get more theory, so that when you come out here, you'll be able to kind of jump in a little bit quicker than other people will, at the expense of you're still going to have to go through and do some dirty work with, and I don't mean like dirty work like paying your dues as a runner kind of dirty work. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. I'm talking about like physically dirty work, like cutting your fingers on like solder points and like all of that stuff. It's just, you know, that's how it is in the professional world, and that's fine. You know, you get used to it. But yeah, I've burnt myself with soldering irons so many times. Like you get used to it. So
For sure,
yeah.
for sure. And while we're on the topic of like sort of transitioning from school to work, do you want to talk a little bit about maybe just LA as a scene in general, as a music scene, as a city, as a culture, and maybe one thing that you were like surprised about, and maybe one thing that you were like, wow, this is how exactly that I thought it was going to be like, if that makes sense.
Yeah. One thing that I was not surprised about, it totally was like normal things. Like all of the stereotypes about LA are true. They're all true. The traffic is horrible. It's awful. It's never going to get better. And you just have to learn how to drive on these roads and what times, work and what times don't. Um, the people out here are very different than the Midwest. They are the Valley Girl accent is real. It is so real. People actually talk like that. It's cool. It's fine. Like I like those people. Um, all of like the kind of like fake Hollywood vibe is absolutely out here. I think what um I think what surprised me the most is, and this is kind of, I think you might get this anywhere you go. It's part of just like kind of growing up and getting out of school and actually working. But it's like something that really kind of surprised me about being out here and being in the industry is just, you know, it was once said to me, I forget by who, but it's like cool people beget cool people. And it's like if you meet one person and you're like, oh, this person is dope. They're really good at what they do and they are helpful and like I enjoy working with them. Chances are they probably know other people that are doing similar things that you can kind of become friends with. And it's like or people they work with are also doing cool projects and they're all really cool. And you sort of build up that web. And it also works in the other direction too. If you meet people that are, kind of sleazy, chances are that's how their friends are too, which again, I mean, that's everywhere, but especially in LA, you just got to be mindful of like who you're hanging out with. Because everybody here is so wildly different. And one more thing really quick about the stereotypes. There is a lot of trash and pollution here, but also it's like you have to find the spots that are absolutely gorgeous. You can talk to Max about this because I took him to hiking in one of these spots on his last day when he was out here. And there's this spot kind of like just down south of the city that's like this beautiful, like huge, like mountain range. It's like great hiking and there's like beaches and stuff. And it's like nobody knows it's there. So you kind of have to like figure out where those parts of town are for you. And you can apply the same, not to be cheesy about it, but like you can apply like the same sort of parallel to finding your place in the professional world. Like if you would have told me like, oh, Joe, you're going to go out to LA and like work with people who are building studios and like making cables and wiring and all that stuff, I would have been like, what? Like I'm an engineer. I make music. Like that's not what I expected to be doing. But turns out that was the right path. So
Cool. I think that's really useful. And for you specifically, I was wondering like, are you interested, like how feasible do you think it is, like if someone was to get into what you're doing and then also, find a route in engineering as well through there? Do you find a lot of people that are like, sort of like, they do a lot of everything, like a little bit of everything, or do you find that it's better to just kind of like niche down into like a certain category and then just try to pursue that?
it kind of depends. I mean, I think everybody out here does a little bit of everything. I think you're not going to meet one person that only does one thing. I don't think that's what it's like here. I think you move out and, everybody kind of has their hands in multiple projects at once. Though I will say like doing that is way more taxing than like having just a stable kind of like 9 to 5 existence, which yeah, but it's so much, yeah, versus like it's so much more fun. And that's, like I said earlier, there have been times out here where it's like I will come into Desk Doctor and do the same thing 5 days a week, and I'm totally fine with that. Like we'll have a big cable job or something like that, and like I need that sort of structure to like kind of reset, my body and mind kind of thing. But then like this past week, I've been jumping around to a million different places, doing a million different things, and it's like that is also so much fun, and you get to meet more people that way, I guess, which is cool too. But yeah, as far as like coming out here and getting into this, it's like what I definitely want to make a point to say in this interview is like, I want, if you're going to come out and be a tech, like relative to other studio jobs, it's like you are going to get paid decently well. Like if you want to go be a runner in a studio, like that's fine. You're gonna be making minimum wage for multiple years. You're gonna be cleaning up after people who are not gonna treat you very well. And if that's what you're into in order to get what you want, that's fine. I'm not criticizing that, but like there are other ways to like kind of break in. And that was what I was very lucky to do, is through working as a tech, I didn't have to go out and be a runner. I can now go into a studio and people are like, oh, you're a tech, like you know what you're doing. Like people treat you with a level of respect, which is, yeah, it's like people are kind of like, gunning to get you in the room and be like, hey, like I need help. Like everybody needs a tech. It's never going to go out of style. Like everybody is always going to need a tech, especially now. I mean, the practice, I mean, Bruce, would you agree? Like there are less techs nowadays than there were.
There are. And the other thing I always pointed out was that when I was coming up, when I was coming up, I had dreams of pushing faders. I mean, I came up, I was a musician first, and then I got into engineering side of things. But I very quickly realized that there was only one chair there in front of the console. There was 100 people trying to get into that chair, and I didn't really like those odds very much. And then once, if you are fortunate enough to actually make it and get into that chair, there's 100 people behind you trying to push you out because they want to get into that chair. And those odds are not very good either. Yeah. Whereas, the tech guy is great. And I have to say, on the ego front, when you come in and you fix something and everybody's thanking you and you've saved the day, that feels very good, I have to tell you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You basically get that sort of Superman complex to a little bit, which you have to sort of play down and be humble about. But everybody has some respect for you, and as a runner, you get treated like crap. I'm afraid it's very sad, and it makes me very upset when I see how a lot of studios treat runners and assistants. But the tech guy is like they always look after you because they know that you're the one who keeps everything running. You're the one who keeps everything going. You put it all together. You hook it all up. And one thing I'm going to jump in very brief. It's a question you asked Joey. One thing is that when we're looking for people to come and work for us, a knowledge of how things work. You can't fix something or connect something or hook something up unless you know what it's meant to do and how it's meant to work. If a lot of times you walk into a studio and someone says, oh, this isn't working. And it's not that at all. It's something completely different. There's still a problem, but you need to know and understand how it all operates in order to be able to get to the point of figuring out what the actual problem is. And, as far as we're concerned, my whole attitude has always been, I'm most interested in people's aptitude and their attitude. Knowledge of how to be a tech is something which, if you have the right attitude and the right aptitude, you can learn that, and you'll learn it fast if you have the right attitude and aptitude. But if you don't, there's no way forward really. So learning how everything goes together and how to operate the gear is still very, very, very important. And I like the guys who actually have everybody who works here has some background in that and some interest in that and experience in that, which is great. I know that I can send any one of our guys into a studio and he can sit down and pull up a session and make something work and say, oh, this is the bit that's not working, which is step one.
Yeah. And that's what Bruce actually just said a second ago about, there's 100 people gunning for the same chair. And then as soon as you get into it, there's 100 people trying to get you out. I was going to say that if he hasn't, because it's something he says around here a lot, and it rings true 100% of the time. And then also, attitude and aptitude are super important. Like we're pretty lucky, I think, with a lot of people that work here, is that everybody's cool and with it, and like we're all down to, even though we might not always know the answer to the question all the time, it's like we all have a certain mindset where we want to figure it out, which is the most, that's the most important thing. And then also, we all know how to hold a soldering iron, which Bruce likes to.
Good to know which end gets hot.
Yeah, good to know which end gets hot, as he says. But yeah, so yeah, I think Bruce said it better than I could. Yeah, so.
Cool. I wanted to open up to if any of you guys have any questions for Joey. If not, I can keep asking him questions, but any of you guys have anything? Henry?
Yeah, hi, I'm Henry.
Hi, Henry.
This is Victor here. I have a question about you work at Desk Doctor and you said how you worked you were kind of 9 to 5 sometimes, but you have other gigs going on. It's a very standard question, but when you're out there, how are you balancing your work life and all these gigs you do with friendships and everything?
Yeah, I wish I had like a sound answer to that, but
Yeah.
it's hard. I'm very lucky to be able to do what I do, and like I enjoy the people I work with, and there is like a social aspect to work as well, whether that's, being able to bond with your coworkers on the job, or like even just, hanging out afterwards kind of thing. Um, but the thing about like work-life balance is that it is all about making it for yourself. Like nobody is going to give you work-life balance. In fact, in a lot of ways, they will actively try to take it away. Now, not here or not anywhere I work, obviously, but it's like if you're doing like studio, like real hardcore studio work, like they're going to be pushing you like overnights and 24-hour shifts and stuff that is not my thing personally. Again, if you're into it and you want to hustle that way, like that's fine, but don't expect to get, that much out of it if you're putting in what I like to say is this is a concept I use with myself a lot. It's like there's a difference between putting full steam ahead into what you're doing and actually getting full steam out of it. If I were to work 24 hours on a project, 8 of those hours would be useful and 16 would be garbage because I don't like to work that way. So that's why, I tend to, as much as I can, I try to do 8-hour days. I try to go home at a decent hour, be in bed by a decent hour, wake up at a decent hour. It's again, that's also me and what I personally like to do just as a human being. Everybody's different with that. But as far as work-life balance goes, like there are certain things you can do. Carl likes to talk about like things that he likes to do to remind himself that he's human. So Carl will be like, oh yeah, like I just started reading this new book because reading reminds me of what it means to be like a person. And it's like I totally like I get that because that is like you have to do those things for yourself. Like I'm very lucky working as a tech that I don't have to work weekends very often. That is a huge thing you'll have to do if you're in studios is working weekends. But I get to be a tech, so I kind of get to like leave at 6 p.m. and be like, I'm gonna finish my project tomorrow, and that's it. And like nobody argues with you. It's
That's great.
yeah. So it's like that's like the other kind of like unseen benefit until you're like in it of like being, out here where the work that we're doing here and the work that, I do as a tech in other places, it's like it's in demand work. So you get to have a little bit of command over your schedule and what you're doing. Whereas if you're going to go be a runner, there's several thousand people that want to be runners. Like you're going to be working exactly when they want you to, and that's going to be your job. So, yeah, I mean, it's as far as like other personal things that I'm doing for like work-life balance out here, like get outside, go to the beach, do things that get you away from Pro Tools, get you away from, whatever you're doing as not as a hobby, like whatever you're doing like professionally or like as a like sort of work project kind of thing. That's what I like to call other things I'm doing that I might not be getting paid for immediately, but it's stuff I'm kind of investing time into. It's like I need a break from that as well. I work on, and you can't do everything all at once. So it's like I will fully admit that my social relationships with people have been a little bit on the back burner as I've been out here, especially over the last year, as I've focused a lot on certain projects I'm working on, as well as like just being busy with work. But I tend to land right around like 40 hours a week, which is what, that's kind of like the ideal for me. And there's a part of me that likes going to work too, to like just keep myself busy. And again, like get off the computer and like go solder some stuff. Like it's a nice way to be sometimes.
Thank you.
Of course.
You got something?
Let me think about it.
All right.
Can I ask this
Yeah.
question?
Or why don't Ivan go first?
Anyway, so I guess
Hi.
maybe an easy like question for you to just like ramble on about. But what has been your most exciting project that you've gone to work on at Test Doctor?
Okay. Yeah, wow, that is a great question. We've done a few. I'll be quick. We did one project where we were replacing chips in a console for Bruno Mars. That was fun. His studio is really, really cool. He has like Michael Jackson and Prince posters everywhere, a ton of vintage synths, and just being in his space is like really cool. And if you remember Matt Teeden, he works there now. He's at that studio. He has like basically Bruno has like a lockout at Warner Brothers studio that they run. So that was really cool. I did a project. I actually just went and sat and cleaned a console for several hours for a producer that lives out in Pacific Palisades. So we got to open his garage door and look out at the ocean all day, which was just awesome. And then I'll mention too that, you know, with this job and with other jobs that are like it, you get to go to like NAMM and other conventions, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it's nice when you're like working them and you get to kind of, under the pretense of your job, like meet other professionals in the industry. I mean, that's always like, there's a cool part of that. I would never go to NAMM again as like an attendee, but if I'm working it, it's fun. So
Yeah, well, I appreciate the representation from the valley, because I'm part from there, so like yeah.
what part of the valley are you from?
So Arleta or Pacoima area, yeah.
Oh, for sure. Okay. So yeah, it's like right here. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I have another just question.
Yeah, sure.
I guess off him, I'm from Pasadena, so are you guys like open? Just could I come in like in the summer just to take a look at what you guys are doing?
Dude, and anytime, yeah, come over. I can shoot you the address. Yeah. Or it's on Google too. Please come by. Give me I'm just gonna put my number in the chat, so just like reach out, or Roger has, or whoever. Yeah, anytime you want to come by, just shoot me a text and I may not be here over the summer, but it's like I'll make sure to get you in with whoever does, whether it's Chris. I'm not sure where Chris is. I think he had something else he was dealing with, so sorry that he wasn't here, but he sends us love, I'm sure. And yeah, so yeah, please come by.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. That goes for all of you too. If you're ever in the area, like just text me, and yeah, we'll make something happen.
For sure. Anyone else want to ask a question, Jake?
Yeah, I guess I'll ask a question. So, as someone who's like looking to move out to LA, kind of, I guess I'm not looking exactly to get into like the teching industry, but like coming from IU, like what, like just any advice or like things to think about as like going through that transition.
Yeah.
That's kind of broad. So yeah.
Got a call.
Yeah, for sure. So let's see.
See what he
Yeah.
says.
Well,
The
the thing about being in LA. Hi, Jamie. Nice to see you. The thing about being in LA is
what's up, Joey? Sorry, I've been trying to like make and eat dinner and hang out with you, so that's why I've been off screen. But it's really good to see you, man. And congrats on all the success. I'm so psyched for you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Oh, it's so good to see you too. Yeah. Please, yeah, send my love to all the other professors as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Will do.
This is cool. I'm glad I was able to stop in and do this. Yeah. So Jacob, it's like you can kind of do whatever you want in whatever kind of career path within like everything is out here. You can go into video games, you can go into teching, you can go into sound design, you can go into whatever. And so I think the best thing to do is make sure that you're keeping up with, like, for example, how I was able to get a lot of jobs out here is I knew somebody in the program that had graduated before me. And so they were able to kind of get me into something, which is how it kind of has to work. Sorry, I just muted myself. So what you have to do is just make sure that you're, like I talked about earlier, like it's all about forming good relationships with people. So as long as you can do that, like you're set. It'll kind of fall into place. And moving into LA is a huge investment of time and money. So, if you have, you just have to kind of like let it ride a little bit, I guess, is my, like, I moved out here, like I wasn't immediately doing anything that I'm doing right now. Like it took a while to kind of build this up. So don't get discouraged. It's gonna be like that wherever you go. LA is just warmer and there's more people here. And but it's also very pretty. So yeah, I mean, I know that's kind of like an amorphous answer, and I apologize, but it's yeah, there's, just keep on good terms with everybody, never burn a bridge, make sure that you are available for people that need you, and that you then make yourself available for or make sure that, it'll come around, other people will be available when you need them as well. So yeah, as far as like actual, yeah, Bruce just threw it in, like, you never know who you're gonna meet. I had some guy, this is a funny story, I haven't told this in a while. I had somebody, I was on Venice Beach for 4th of July last year, not for any other reason than like a friend of mine was DJing on the beach. He works for Pioneer, and he was just DJing, and he made this edit of one of my songs I had made with a band a while ago, and like it was like a dance, it was already a dance song because like he made like a dance kind of remix of it and played it for like 30 seconds. And it was not very good or anything like that. It was just like funny. He was like, "Oh, Joey's here, I'm gonna play this song for 30 seconds," and the crowd kind of liked it. Whatever, it doesn't matter. The crowd being like 20 people on a beach really has nothing, to do with anything. And then this dude came up to me afterwards, because my buddy like pointed me out, and he's like, "Oh, he made this line." I'm like, "No, I didn't make this. Like, it's whatever." And this dude comes up to me afterwards, and he's like, "Hi, like, do you do remixes? Like, I'm Ryan Merchant from Capital Cities. Like, do you want to like do a remix of it?" And I was like, "What the fuck is going?" Sorry, I was like, "What is, like, how does this sort of thing happen?" Now, that didn't turn into anything. I was like, "Yeah, sure, of course. Like, this is kind of weird, but like, absolutely. Like, let me hit you up or something." And I think we never ended up meeting or getting in contact or anything. But it's like that sort of thing can just randomly happen, and I was not prepared for it, and you won't be either. But it will, like, those types of things do happen. And it's funny, just like, as long as you're getting in and meeting just cool people who, as I said earlier, like, cool people beget cool people. Like, as long as you have a solid group that you can call on to get work or even just hang out with, like, that's all that matters. And it'll make your experience out here way better too. If you come out here and like your entire focus is just like networking and getting jobs, it's like, that's really not how we do things. Like, you have to have some sort of like, personability in order to get anywhere here. People are going to look at your resume and you were like, "Oh, you studied audio engineering in school." Like, don't really care. Not, I can't say I've ever gotten a job because, I took a 470, great class. I loved every minute of it, but it's like, people don't hire based on like, let me look at your GPA. Like, that's just not how it works here. People will say, "Oh, you're from IU. That's a good program. I know that program. I know this person, and they were all great. Let me hire you that way." But that's because they have good relationships with those people, not because you did something really cool or interesting academically, which continue to do those things, because those will give you experiences that you will translate later on. Like, all of your academic stuff you do in school, it will not directly translate to your job. It will give you skills that directly translate to your job. And that's like the most important thing. Like, you're never going to have to take another electronics exam, but it's like those skills that you have, same with like the skills that you learn. And I'll say it partially because he's here, but also because it's true. The skills that you get in Jamie's practicals, that will help you out. And I know that those are really tough, but it's like, yeah, I mean, they work. I gotta give Jamie all the credit. It's like, in fact, like, Jamie, I might even suggest you do more practicals. I don't know.
Oh no, I think
I'm
the
kidding.
students are
I'm
terrified enough
I'm kidding. But
and terrorized. Actually, I want to point out something that you're talking about that I think is really, really great. It's not even advice. It's kind of a brace you for it. And I think it's one of those things about the industry that like seems to, at least in your case, has proven to have not changed since I graduated. Right. So I finished my program in 2003, and I went out into the world, and I had a lot of work experience because I was working as a professional before I did my degree. I mean, I was, the chief audio recording engineer at Setner School of Music, so I'd done a ton of recordings. And I went out trying to track down an internship and said, yep, like I got this great degree from University of Miami and I got all this professional experience. Nobody gave a shit. Like, just kind of didn't matter. It was all about like, oh, I have a connection through my network of this person, and some of those were alumni, from the same institution kind of stuff. And some of them were just people I met because I started going just, because AES convention is coming up. And I know some of the folks in this room are probably going to go. Like, I would meet people at AES. I mean, my first job out of undergrad, somebody recruited me because I happened to enter the student design competition, and I won the student recording competition that year. And they were like, do you want to come work for the BAM Center of the Arts as a staff recording engineer? And I was like, sounds great. So I remember getting out of school and feeling really deflated and really defeated by that. Like, yeah, like I went to IU and I got this great degree and I know how to do stuff. And they're like, yeah, so whatever. Like, I just spent all this money and apparently it's worth nothing, but it's not, it's not.
No, but it rings true though, because I remember I interviewed to just be, it was the weirdest thing ever. Actually, this is a good story to tell you too, because you guys will probably deal with this when you move probably anywhere. It's like I applied to be at first to be an assistant at Evergreen, which is the student. We have a connection through there. His name is Sam Ramirez. He works with Harvey Mason Jr., the guy who runs the Grammys, and it's their studio out in Burbank, I think. Yeah, it's in Burbank. And I applied there to be like an assistant. They like needed, and they were like, oh, like, sorry, like we hired somebody else. Like, sorry, you like didn't get that position. And I'm like, that's fine. Like I still want to come work for you. Like, I'll be a runner. And they were like, are you sure? I was like, yes, like I just need a job. And then I went in for that interview and they came in and they were like, I don't see string sections on your resume, so I don't think you've done any of those. And I couldn't, like, by that point, it was too late for me to say, like, yeah, I've actually done a lot of string sections working at being a student at IU. I just didn't have it listed as text on my resume. And that was part of the reason I didn't get that job, which is insane. But that's how it goes sometimes. So it's like, now, and what the funniest thing is that looking back, it's like, I'm glad I'm not working there because that would have not been as fun, because I would have been on studio side, so I wouldn't have been working with Sam or any of like the cool stuff that they're doing there. It would have been just getting coffee. But if you're into that, we have a connection at Evergreen and I can probably help get you a job. So but yeah, so it's like there's I think what Jamie brought up is really cool. I mean, we all have a degree of like, we get out here and it's like, it's very sobering. Like, people, you say like, oh, I went to a 4-year engineering school, and people are like, oh, cool, and then move on. So and you have all the opportunity to show them through your ability that you went to a 4-year engineering school, not necessarily through your resume or through an email.
Joey,
Awesome.
could you speak to especially like, for these generations of students who are coming out of the pandemic experience, whether it been in high school or college, can you speak to, have you found it relevant and important to have like direct physical contact and like literal FaceTime with people rather than the FaceTime and the Zoom and all of that?
I mean, I'm kind of biased in that regard because no, bias isn't the right word, but you know what I mean? It's like, I kind of got lucky in that I was out of high school once that happened. And so a lot of like, and I was a little bit older than some of my peers in the program. So it's like, I was like well out of that sort of like growing up range where like FaceTime is like psychologically the most important. But it's like, once I got out here and it was very odd. Like, things were very restrictive out here for COVID precautions when I moved here. And then it's like overnight, people just stopped caring. That was kind of my experience. And I was like, okay, like, I guess I'm gonna run with this. I guess the most important thing is to, we've gone into studios where they're like, okay, like, please wear a mask. And I'm like, okay, I guess we're wearing a mask. I'm not, obviously I'm not going to say like, no, but everybody's different. And I think actual FaceTime in this industry is huge. Like, it is hard to, you'll, especially if you're doing, some of the work similar to what I'm doing. Is like, you'll make a lot of phone calls and that's fine, but it's getting actually in the room with people and making a connection with them and just being able to talk to people is huge. So yeah, I mean, so yes, to answer your question, yeah, like actual FaceTime, hugely important. Make sure that you are able to hold a conversation with somebody. I mean, that can go such a long way. This is the music industry, because like, even though I do a lot of technical work, like it's still the music industry. It's like, is full of just a lot of very emotional people. And that is how it goes. And you have to be able to interface with them. It's like, you have to know who you're talking to and know how to communicate with them. Everybody has their own style, and it's up to you as somebody who wants to get a job to be able to communicate the right way with the right people.
So is being able to read a situation, read a room, reading body language, is that a really important skill for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I was just at this more or less a party last night for another project I was working on, and people there from like kind of all ages, all walks of life, sort of thing. And some people that are a bit more higher profile in the industry, and it's like you walk up to them and it's like it's not the kind of place, even at like networking events and stuff too, which I don't do any of that, but it's like, you're not going to walk up to them and be like, oh wow, like I love this record you worked on, like can you, like that's not how people work. They want to say like, hey, like I'm oh, I'm blanking on his name, this is horrible, I should remember this guy's name. The guy who worked on Ross Hogarth, that worked with Mellencamp, he was there at this party last night. So it's like, I talked to him and I was like, he's like, oh yeah, you went to IU, like I worked at Belmont Mall, like we're right before they built it, like I was working with Mellencamp. I'm like, oh, Stucker and Mark and like all these people. And that was like a good conversation to have with him. It's like, I wasn't gonna say like, oh my gosh, you worked on Mellencamp's record, that's so cool, like that's amazing. Like, it's just, have conversations with people as if they're normal people, and you'll realize that they are just normal people. They just happen to have qualifications or experiences that that's the biggest thing about being out here, because in LA and in New York and in other cities, Chicago, Atlanta, wherever, like you're gonna eventually meet people that are of sort of high profile, high stature, whatever it is. They've done a lot of cool stuff, and the most important thing you can do with those people is treat them like they're normal. They don't want, if they're at a party or even just out in the open, like they don't want to talk about their achievements. Some of them do maybe, but most of them don't. And just like treat people the way you want to be treated, obviously, but also just treat people normally. Don't be overly chummy. Don't make it all of it. Sometimes people just want to talk about their dogs or like what they ate for breakfast or like stuff like that. It doesn't have to be like a what plugins are you using conversation, which I have to deal with people who think like that sometimes out here, and it's exhausting. So yeah, just remember, as our friend Carl said, like remember to be a human, and that's about it.
Cool.
So like what plugins are you using right now? No.
Dude, I don't know. I like
oh, I'm kidding.
I know. Even if we were seriously asking that, I wouldn't even have a good answer.
Well, you're kind of a hardware guy now, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess I am. Yeah. As far as like actual projects, yeah, the FL Studio Parametric EQ, I use that a lot.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna wrap it up.
For sure.
For now, Joey, I really appreciate you coming by and sharing your wisdom and knowledge. I think all of us are really gonna benefit from it, especially you first years, and when starting thinking about while you're interfacing through college and stuff like that. But yeah, I'll send you Joey's contact information, his number. But yeah, can we get a round of applause for Joey?
Thank you guys. Yeah, Roger, let me get you my I'll send you you have my number, and I'll send you my email as well.
Sounds good.
You can just forward it. Yeah, I mean, the last thing I wanted to say, guys, is just remember who kind of stands in front of you every day, like Jamie, Jake, all the professors, especially with regard to my work with Stucker. Like, pick these people's brains. That's what they're here for. Like, you'll be surprised what you learn if you just sit down and have a conversation with them. So I'll leave you with that. And yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was awesome.